Hi everyone, this is just a short video to show how to use the new connection method of the Microsoft Graph API in the Exchange Calendars integration works. So start off by going to Configuration, Integration and Exchange Calendars, and then select Microsoft Graph API from the connection method option. This method involves creating an application in Azure AD, so we're just going to run through that quickly now. So start by going to App Registrations and then New Registration. Give your app a name, leave it as a single tenant app, and then we need to add a redirect URI in here. So the redirect URI is just your web app URL followed by /Azure/auth. And we're just going to click register on this app here. So that's created the basic app for us. So if we first go to the authentication tab, we can just check that we do have a valid redirect in there. We then move on to the certificates and secrets screen, and we're just going to create a new client secret. And we're just going to copy that value so that it can be used in a moment. We now move on to the API permissions tab, and we're just going to remove this permission for a moment, and then we're going to add 4 new delegated permissions to our app. So if we go to add a permission and then select Microsoft Graph API and then delegated permissions, first of all we're going to have users.read.all or user.read.all, sorry. Then next up, we are going to add calendars, and we want to be able to read and write shared and also read and write normal calendars. And then one final permission, if we go back to the Graph API and delegated, and we're just going to allow offline access. As you can see here, this final permission needs admin consent, so we're just going to click here and grant that admin consent. If we now switch back to the Overview tab, and we're just going to take a copy of the application ID and also the tenant ID, as these values are going to be used in the Halo setup screen in just a moment. So if we now scroll down, here we can see we've got the Azure application details fields. So we're just going to copy those fields, the application secret, the application ID and the tenant ID in here. And this is now ready to authorize the application. So if we just click here, this will redirect us. And we're now being redirected back to Halo, and the app should now be connected in the integration. Here we go. So we can now see the application that we're connected to and also the user that we're connected as. If we need to, we can disconnect the application just here. So we're going to start off by looking at syncing appointments to Exchange. So first of all, the person who is creating the appointment, they are going to be the organizer of the appointment in Exchange, and they will hold what is known as the master appointment in Exchange. For the purpose of this demo, I have myself and 3 of my colleagues who I have access to their calendars, and we're going to be creating some appointments, and we're going to see those go into the calendars in Exchange. You can enable the syncing for all the agents by clicking this button. I'm not going to do that here because I don't want to turn it on for everyone. Once you have enabled it for certain technicians, you can then test the calendar access to see if there's any errors and if you've got any problems accessing certain calendars with your connected account. Just to show you where these permissions are, if we go to My Account, and then on the Preferences tab, under Calendars and Appointments, you can see here there is an option for when to create appointments using a calendar integration. So we're just going to hit Test Calendar Access here. And as we can see here, I have 2 of my colleagues who I still have access to their calendars and I can still create appointments for. We can see down here that one of my colleagues has now removed the access, and that means that we now cannot find the object. So any errors will just be displayed down here. Now that we're happy with this, we're just going to go into configuration and calendars and appointments. And we're just going to go into appointment types. And we'll see here that I've added an extra appointment type for a Teams meeting. One new feature of the integration when you are using the Microsoft Graph API is the ability to create Teams meetings for technicians. So you just need to make sure that you have this checkbox ticked, and then whenever we create a meeting or an appointment with this appointment type, it will actually create a Teams meeting in Exchange rather than just a standard one. So if we now switch to the calendar, and I'm going to just schedule in an appointment for 5 o'clock today. Just going to create ourselves a test appointment. I'm going to invite my 2 colleagues who I still have access, or whose calendars I still have access to. We're not going to add a user, and we're just going to select Teams meeting from the drop down. If we save this appointment now, we can see it's created an appointment for all 3 of our technicians. If we open this appointment, as we've created a Teams meeting, you can now see there is an extra option next to the complete button to join this meeting. If we click join, it has popped up on another window, but we can see that it is now open Microsoft Teams, and I'm now about to join that meeting, even though it is a little bit early. We can also see if we go into Exchange, just bring my calendar across, that the appointment has now been added to my calendar. Any updates in here? So if we edit this appointment now, second, and if we want to bring this forward to say 4 o'clock, if we just save this here, so that's moved the appointment in here, and then in just a few seconds we should see that that has now been reflected in Exchange. Can also delete appointments from Halo, which will delete them in Exchange. So if we just hit the delete option on this appointment, that's now removed it from here. And if we go into our Exchange calendar, you can see the appointment has now been removed. One thing to bear in mind as well is that during this process, when editing or adding or deleting appointments, appointment reminders and invites will be sent automatically to any attendees of the appointment. So if we now switch back to the Exchange Calendars config screen, we're now going to move on to importing appointments. So there are 2 ways to import appointments. First of all, we can import them manually, and then second of all, we can import them on a schedule using the Halo integrator. It's recommended that you do a manual import first, particularly if you're switching from an old method, as this will just make sure that all of the relevant fields that are required to use the integration have been updated. Existing appointments that have been imported via the old integrations will be updated correctly as part of using the new import method. So first of all, we can import appointments, specifying a minimum start date here. This just means that any appointment after this start date will be picked up and imported for any technician that we've enabled syncing for. So if I just click this option here, we can see it's now populated with appointments from all of our calendars. And then once we've imported those, if we do import the initial occurrence of a series, we'd then also be able to import recurring appointments. As we can see, currently don't have any of those. If we just go into Outlook and we'll just add a new recurring appointment. So here we have a weekly appointment starting on the 19th. We can see that's slowly moving through week by week. So if we now go to import appointments, and we're just going to import that one appointment for now. So this appointment won't actually show in the calendar because it is the master appointment. But if we now go to import recurring appointments, this will pick up any appointment within the next year. So if you have a daily occurrence, it will import 365 appointments, providing the appointment does continue without a finish date before that. And then each day that you run an import, either manually or via the Halo integrator, it will then pick up the future appointments as well. So if we just import a small selection of these, and then if we navigate to our calendar and go to the month view, we can now see ignoring these existing appointments, we can now see that the test recurrence has now been imported. There we go.